Welcome everyone to the CellTrust and Guava webinar on CellTrust SecureLine, mobilizing communications to drive business engagement. My name is Q Mangus. I'm the Director of Product Marketing here at Guava, and I will be your host today. We are joined by Jeff Shaw and Joseph Petrosky from CellTrust. Jeff is Executive Director of Sales at CellTrust, and we have Joseph Petrosky, who is Senior Director of Sales Engineering. Just a few items before we get started. If you have any questions, we will have some time at the end of the presentation to have some question and answers. So please ask any questions that you may have. We'll go ahead and turn the time over to Jeff, and then he will be followed by Joseph. Jeff, take it away.
I'm guessing by the group of attendees here this afternoon, text messaging is on your list of items to secure or archive. And so CellTrust has moved into this space. We now can deliver communications through multiple channels, including standard SMS, which is that patented technology I just referred to. We can also deliver through the cellular data or the Wi-Fi infrastructure leveraged within your facilities. So everything that CellTrust does now is focused on security, it's focused on compliance, and so we've taken into consideration all of the different regulatory bodies that you may have overseeing your organization. So we've taken a look at the Freedom of Information Act, we've looked at the Dodd-Frank Act, we've looked at the HIPAA security guidelines, and made sure that we accomplish all of your compliance requirements and built them into our tool, which can be personalized for your specific deployment. And I'll get into some of those options here shortly. We do have a robust list of customers that utilize our services, from the SMS gateway services to the completely secured and locked down voice and text option, as well as the solution which allows you to gain access to the outside world, as well as provide an archive of all those communications, whether it be text or voice. And so what we do is we introduce a application to your device, and this can be downloaded from either the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. It is a free download, so your employees would never incur any fees for utilizing our services. However, they would need some credentials to register to the secure environment. And of course, any communication that takes place within our application is secured end-to-end. So as long as your employees are communicating with one another, they will be able to partake in a 256-bit AES encrypted voice or text communication. All data in transit as well as at rest is encrypted, so you can rest assured that no one is eavesdropping in on your conversations. This is an added benefit that you may not have been able to experience with the existing text solution built into your service. And so what we do for financial services is actually we introduce a mobile business number. This mobile business number is similar to the same effect in which you would introduce a corporate email address when you come to a new organization. So if I bring my own device, I bring my own phone number, my company now gives me a corporate email and a corporate cell phone number. I know that anything I do through corporate email is going to be monitored. The same now goes with the CellTrust SecureLine application. Anything that I do within this environment is going to be monitored and secured. And so this would allow for e-discovery through Guava's retained product offering. They take our conversations and package them up, particularly the text communications, package them up into a method in which is more readily searchable and simplifies the e-discovery processes. And so within their interface, you now have access to email, you've got access to social media. Now with the introduction of CellTrust, you now gain access to the text and call data, which previously was not available. And so currently, we do consider ourselves device agnostic. We do support Apple and Android operating systems. Later this year, we plan to accomplish an application for Windows and BlackBerry. So if there are any users still out there utilizing BlackBerry, we are aiming to support you guys in the short term. However, we're finding that most individuals are looking at a BlackBerry migration process, which we're certainly capable of assisting with. So if you are one of those that's looking at a BlackBerry migration and haven't begun that quite yet, this might be a perfect opportunity to port that mobile business, or port the BlackBerry number over to CellTrust for the new mobile business number, particularly for the SecureLine application. And so what we've come across in the various verticals in which we commonly sell into, and those big ones being healthcare, government, as well as financial services. So many of you are looking at defining your mobile strategy. Perhaps it's looking at, do we allow BYOD? Do we only go with corporate liable? Do we have these COPE devices? Or do we have a combination of the two depending on the level of restrictions and regulatory bodies overseeing this small group of employees that you have? So what we do is we provide opportunities to go with whichever plan fits your requirements. Our application can be provisioned to operate on your device depending on whether or not you leverage an MDM solution or a containerized environment. We do have relationships with some of the largest MDM and container product offerings in the marketplace. So rest assured that we will be able to work with whichever existing incumbent services that you have. Along goes with the data collection. So we're obviously collecting this data. There's a server that sits in between, and it can be utilized as a SaaS solution or brought on premise for you to manage personally. And the option is really up to you. Depends on what you've done historically. But we can certainly have those conversations at a later date if you want to learn more about those two offerings. But certainly we're compiling this data, this content, and Guava now is getting the content delivered. So there's a segue in between that allows us to deliver this to the retained product offering, during which Guava does what they do best. They allow you to sift through this content, tag files, and label conversations based upon what work and searches have already been placed. So it's been an amazing partnership to date. We just came back from the FINRA event in Washington, D.C., so if any of you were there and met with either CellTrust or Guava, welcome back. And with that, we're going to go into the CellTrust application. Some of the feature sets that we offer give you a little bit of an understanding of how we can meet your business needs and requirements. So obviously in the forefront, compliance is always a super big question. And how do we ensure that we're within compliance with the regulatory bodies that oversee our industries? And so I understand that there's a few different verticals on the line. So at the end, if there's any questions specific for your industry, please feel free to speak up. But we do aim to accomplish the requirements for each one of the verticals we sell into. Most recently, we've submitted our solution for FIPS 140-2 certification, which is going to allow us to sell into the government space into the arena of secret communication. This ultimately reduces costs and allows organizations to accomplish secure mobile communications that previously were very expensive to accomplish. Many of you are familiar with satellite phones. You've probably watched 24 and heard Jack Bauer say, hey, is this a SecureLine? And the cost of those conversations is expensive, and it requires individuals to each have one of those devices. Now, with the introduction of the CellTrust SecureLine, it simply just requires each individual to download the CellTrust SecureLine application and register to a secure environment. So our solution does operate over an IP channel. It operates over cellular data or the Wi-Fi infrastructure, and it allows you to make and receive phone calls at any point in which you have connectivity. And so if you are traveling abroad, there could be an opportunity to eliminate or reduce roaming fees or long-distance charges, which could help your organization save some of your resources. So we do aim to accomplish, the ability to provide the flexibility of working remotely, as well as allowing you to still have some of the regulatory controls that you would like to have as an organization. And so you get that perfect balance between privacy and compliance, because we're not peering into your personal communication on your carrier number. We're simply just reviewing and monitoring the communication that takes place on the introduced mobile business number by CellTrust. And so that creates a dual persona experience, particularly if you are leveraging an MDM or a containerized environment. So if you're familiar with those environments, it does partition off a section of your phone. And in this picture, it actually is a physical line. Of course, this is just a representation of what you would experience in a separation between your personal apps, your Facebooks and whatnot, versus your secure email services, your CRM, and so forth. And so CellTrust would reside in this secure environment. Now, the application as a standalone tool is self-containerized. It does provide a lot of the administrative controls that you would expect in an environment like this. However, if you do leverage one of these existing containers, the controls are all built into that environment. Our solution does have a remote wipe capability from the administrative portal. You do have the ability to review text within this interface, look at timestamps, and measure the latency of the communication that's taking place across your server. Now, CellTrust does have different safeguards in place, including a PIN number that's required to gain access once you've registered to the environment. And it does have policies and procedures that can be defined by the administrator to give access to different groups, or perhaps even hide one group from another. So within financial services, it's pretty common that the brokers are the ones that actually require the archive of communication. And very commonly, they're not supposed to be communicating with the compliance department at all. And so in this environment, we could actually, as an administrator, hide the compliance department from the brokers. And that way they wouldn't be able to communicate with one another, wouldn't know their contact info. So with the introduction of CellTrust plus the Guava Retain solution, you now actually have an encrypted, traceable, long-term archiving solution for not just email, not just social media, but now voice and text messaging as well. And of course, all the content at rest is also encrypted and secure so that no one outside your organization can obtain access. And so this is a glimpse at what it would look like if we were hosting the solution on premise. It would sit behind your firewall. All communication, whether it be voice or text, is going to travel over the cellular network. And if it's secure end-to-end, it's going to go through the firewall to the server. Server is going to recognize that this communication is intended for another application. It's going to decrypt it, archive it, store it within the Guava environment, the Retain environment, and then it's actually going to send it back to the application, which would be one of the two devices here. And so that's an encrypted end-to-end communication workflow. However, if I'm communicating with somebody that does not have the CellTrust SecureLine application on their device, it's going to have that same traffic path going into the server and being stored at the Guava Retain product, but the server is going to recognize that the communication is actually intended for somebody that's not a member of this secure environment. And so when it does that, it leaves the communication decrypted and sends it back out through your firewall and over the cellular data network in an unencrypted fashion. And that is how a recipient on the other end can receive your communications without actually, in fact, having the SecureLine application on their device. And so that communication workflow is ideal for FOIA compliance and SEC compliance. Now, if you're in a healthcare environment, of course, we want to ensure that the communication workflow is actually locked down and there's no access to the outside world to ensure that we're protecting the PHI and that we're within the HIPAA security guidelines. And so we actually wouldn't introduce the mobile business number to that environment. It would simply just be a secure end-to-end workflow. And so CellTrust has taken great pride in the relationships that we've built. And so our ecosystem of partnerships is quite robust. We have relationships with Apple and specifically Samsung. The two of them have provided great access to some of their APIs that allow us to do some very neat things on their devices. And so if you're in the IT world or within healthcare, there's something that's built into our application that allows you to send and receive pages. And these pages are known as mission critical messages, and they do come across with a different audible sound. The audible sound is replicated that of a paging device. It goes off for 10 seconds every 30 seconds over the course of 5 minutes or until the communication has been read. And so this is designed to actually grab your attention and alert you that this is a more serious communication that's coming across. And so within healthcare, there's obvious reasons to want that type of service. Now, if you're within one of the other verticals, healthcare, financial services, or government, this can be utilized within your IT world. So any system that sends out an alert, whether it be email or text message, can now be sent to the SecureLine application in that form of a page, which would be designed to wake you up, perhaps, if you were sleeping. Now, on the Android operating system, we do have the ability to override the silent functionality. Apple doesn't permit us to take advantage of that control, but there are other items. Every communication that comes through, as you'll see here shortly from Joseph, is that the communication does come through with a push notification, an audible sound, as well as a vibrate. And this way, it's aimed to ensure that you get the individual's attention. Everything comes through with a timestamp. So you get a sent message receipt, you get a delivery receipt, a read receipt, and even a deleted message receipt should it have been deleted from the device. Now, of course, everything is auditable on the server, and there's a track record of everything that takes place along this secure line. And so we do have relationships with the major carriers here in the U.S. and Canada. Currently, T-Mobile and Rogers both have the ability to bill on behalf of our services, as does Guava and Good Technology, and so as well as does Samsung. They're one of our newest partners in the reseller world, but that is something we've integrated there with their Knox environment. Perhaps if you're looking at that, you can reach out to us to learn more. But without further ado, I'd like to hand it off to my Senior Director of Technical Services, Joseph Petrosky, who's actually going to run through a live demonstration of our SecureLine application to showcase exactly how these workflows look and how you can envision utilizing this service here within your organization.
Excellent, Jeff. Thank you very much. So I've been made the presenter, so give me a moment to get my screen share here. There we go. All right. Can we see the two smartphones that I have displayed now?
Yep, we can see it on the screen. Looks great.
Perfect. Well, as Jeff said, thank you, everybody, for joining today's webinar. Jeff did a fantastic job of going through and really explaining the value proposition as well as the functionality of the CellTrust SecureLine application and platform. And what I want to do today is just to go through a brief demonstration of our SecureLine client on both an Apple iPhone on the left-hand side as well as a Samsung Galaxy device here on the right-hand side. So as you notice, both of these phones are at the basic home screens now. What I want to do is start off by actually launching the applications and kind of showing some differences as things happen here. So as I launch the app on the iPhone, you'll actually notice that I chose not to have a PIN number on the iPhone. So I launched the app launches as you would expect. And I did that so that I can showcase, if I launch it on the Android, here I've chosen to create a PIN number to protect my application from somebody just grabbing my phone if it's unlocked for whatever reason and being able to access the application. So users have those choices that they can make versus PIN or no PIN based on what the administrators allow them to do. So from an administrative level, that can be controlled as well. Maybe the organization wants everybody to have PINs on the application. It's completely up to them. Also, if our application does reside in the Good Technology secure container, as Jeff spoke of, we do support container platforms, then we can leverage that security the container provides and not force the end user to jump through a number of hoops to get into the container and then have to necessarily put a PIN number in just to unlock our app if the container is providing a level of security. So again, left-hand side, I've got my iPhone. On the right-hand side, I've got my Android. I'm going to go ahead and sign into my Android here with my PIN number for the SecureLine client, and I'm brought to the home screens for both devices. The goal has really been to customize the layout and the navigation of the application to suit the UI experience for Apple versus Android. And so that's why you see a little bit of a difference between the two home screens for our application on the two different devices themselves. Both of these devices are hooked up to my demo server so I can run this demo for you here. And so anytime that I'm communicating from one device to another, it's doing so in a secure encrypted fashion. As Jeff spoke of, we can send messages between these two devices. It travels through our server. A record is made for Guava Retain to pick up and archive. When we run phone calls from device to device, the same thing happens as well. So I'm going to start off here by just simply going into my messages section on my iPhone to have a communication with my Samsung device here. So I've already had a little bit of communication. If I open up this Samsung Avant entry here, this is my Samsung device on the right-hand side, and I'll go ahead and send it a quick message. And send. You notice immediately I get a banner that pops up on my Samsung on the right-hand side. So my Samsung received a push notification from Google saying that there was data to pick up. My application went, retrieved that data, and you see under messages it says one message unread. Now, on the left-hand side, if you'll notice where I type this message, it says delivered. So right now, as I've sent the message to the Samsung, I know the message has been delivered. It has not been read yet. If I tap my messages list, the status still doesn't change over here, but I see that I've got a message from my CellTrust Apple device, and it's unread, it's bolded here. If I tap it to open it, so I actually have that message now opened, and you'll notice on the left-hand side on my Apple device, that status did change from delivered to opened. As Jeff said, I could choose to delete the message. That could be reflected if I wanted to be able to see that information. But our goal is, text messaging is a lot like fire and forget. You send it out. You don't know if your teenager's reading your messages or whatever. But messaging in the business world, it's critical that you know what's going on with your message so that you can make business decisions. Us providing the dispensation of those messages helps the people communicating to know what's going on with their messaging. As I type back, and send, I get sent. Because I was in the message string on my Apple, it automatically brought it in and it opened it because I had that communication open with this user on the Android, and so it automatically marked it as opened here on the right-hand side. Now, as I'm crafting messages, there are a few other features that you can apply to that message to make the behavior change a little bit, as Jeff spoke of. On my Apple device, if I simply click the gear next to the message box where I type, I have options, for example, the pager notification. As Jeff spoke of, that I can make the message be delivered to my recipient as a high priority message and make the device act differently in that respect. I have some options for lifespan features that we've added to our functionality. How many times the message may be opened, how long will the message survive on my recipient's device until it's deleted. I can make it have a time of life of, say, 1 minute, and then that message actually go away. And when does that start? Does it start when it's first opened, or does it start when the message has been received? Very much a mission impossible kind of feature. This message is going to self-destruct as a concept. We also have the acknowledgement request. Notice by default, on delivery and open by recipient, those are the acknowledgements I'm getting back. Deleted by recipient is by default not turned on. Users can turn that on a per message basis if they wish to. And then finally here at the bottom, the send setting. And this is specific to, as I'm going to demonstrate here in a moment, if I send out of network, so if I send to a personal cell phone number, when the server is deciding what to do with that message, this action, which is being controlled by the server, decides what happens. In this case, when that message gets sent out, it's being sent as a decrypted text. And notice I don't have the option to change that. Again, an administrative control, I can decide not only which features are configured in what way, but I also decide whether or not that recipient or that user has the ability to modify the settings I've put in place. So if I save the change I've made here of 1 minute before it's being deleted, and I'm going to send it as a pager message, and I hit done, and I just type another quick message, important message, and I misspelled, so it's nice to have autocorrect there, and I send. Notice the difference in the tone of the device. So as Jeff said, if I left this alone, it would sit here and continue to work and continue to notify me. Also notice the icon is slightly different, letting me know that there's a lifespan setting, and the color of the message on the sender side is different, and it also an icon just letting me know that there's a lifespan situation going on with this message. And I've got this message, I've opened it up. I don't see that I've got 1 minute until the message is going to be deleted, but that message will be getting deleted once 60 seconds does expire. So I've kind of beat the messaging kind of horse to death a little bit from device to device. I want to talk a little bit about phone calls now. The difference between a my time conversation where I send a message and the recipient decides what they want to do versus a phone call, which is a real-time, I need to communicate with you right now type of activity. So very similar. If I start off here, let me go from the Android side in this case. We have voice, messages, contacts, and we, of course, have a settings section on our application. And I showed an example of going through messages to craft a message to someone. What I can also do, if I would rather, is I can go to my contact section, and I can simply scroll for a contact that I want to communicate with. In this case, the CellTrust Apple user is my Apple device right here, and I have options to either place a phone call or send a message. And I have both of those plus signs are green, letting me know both options are available for that user, and my CellTrust Apple user is available. Notice the one right above it called CellTrust Android is actually offline, so that user is not available to be communicated with. If I simply tap the phone icon here, it's going to start a secure call that's going to my Apple device. The Apple device is going to start ringing here in just a moment. And it's coming from my Samsung Avant device, and I can choose to answer. That call is now bridged across Wi-Fi connectivity or cellular, and that call is also being recorded back on the server level. I have access to keypad, speakerphone, I can mute, whatever, all the normal features of placing a phone call is available for that end user, and then I can choose to end the call, and it will end that call on both sides. Now, if you want to place a call, you don't necessarily want to talk to the person, or the person doesn't want to talk to you, there are options within our application for that as well. If I go back to recent, and I place a call from my Apple device back to my Samsung, and I have reject options here. I can choose to reject outright, or I can reject with a message. If I choose to reject with a message, I actually can say, I will call you back later. So we get an automated message that the person's unavailable. If I now go ahead and hang that call up, I actually have one new message on my Apple device, and if I go and open it from Samsung Avant, it says, I will call you back later. So very similar to what you see in some texting and cellular phone call options where you can reject a call with an automated message. You can do that same thing here as well. Communication is not just constrained to in-network devices. If, as an organization, you choose to, you can allow these devices to actually communicate outside of the network itself, being able to communicate via SMS to an SMS phone number or placing a call to a cellular landline itself. So, for example, if I take that Android device away for a second and place my personal Android device here, a little bit larger, it's a Note 4. The nice thing about our solution, and the reason why I had to change devices to show this example is, if a user's phone is registered on the CellTrust SecureLine solution, and a user tries to maybe circumvent the solution or just accidentally types in the 10-digit number of that user instead of trying to pick them out of the solution, the server will actually look up every incoming communication, voice or text, and map it to the user's device to see, is that device registered? If the device is registered, we actually take the most secure, least cost route and deliver that via data and keep it within the confines of our application, only if that user is actually not part of that CellTrust SecureLine installation will the server itself then make a decision, do we need to pipe that message out via SMS or via cellular call across whatever carrier is necessary. So this is my personal device here. So if I back up here a moment and, for example, place a voice call, and I've got 2 to 1 bar of AT&T connectivity. So I don't have the best signal, unfortunately, inside of my metal building here, and so my cellular doesn't want to be connected. But that data can be, those messages can be delivered out to the cellular network either as voice calls and be bridged and connected, or be sent out as SMS messages. And I think the key here with this conversation is that those messages, those voice calls, those messages going out as SMS are also recorded on the server so that Guava Retain as a solution can pick those messages up and be able to archive those away for later e-discovery and work like that. So at the end of the day, the CellTrust SecureLine application provides a solution for organizations looking for secure internal connectivity and messaging, both text and voice, as well as organizations that want to enable their internal users to communicate with the outside world in a way that's secure and traceable and auditable after the fact. So if you want further information, as Jeff spoke of as well, we're happy to do more in-depth demonstrations and have conversations regarding our solution at a higher technical level. But I'm going to go ahead and stop here and open up the floor for questions regarding our solution and our application in general, and especially how we integrate with Guava Retain.
Okay. Thanks, Joseph, and thanks, Jeff, for the information. Let's see if we have some questions that come through. We'll give it just a moment here. So here's one that comes through is, does CellTrust require the mobile device to change its phone number, or does it use a virtual phone number?
That's a great question. We actually use a virtual phone number that's assigned to our application. So there's no requirement to change the phone number on the device, and technically there's no requirement to have a phone number on the device per se. Our application can work over Wi-Fi only devices, as well as we can operate over cellular and Wi-Fi enabled devices.
Great. So like, would that be something that would work on an iPad, for example?
Yes. Now,
Great.
Of course, your call quality will vary. iPods, iPads, tablets aren't meant to be, telephones per se, and so the speakers and microphones they put inside of them aren't as high of quality as they are on the actual phones themselves. But yes, technically you could receive, and I've received a call and placed a call on my Samsung tablet before through SecureLine.
Great. Let's see. Do you have the ability to restrict an iOS user from using the iMessage or SMS and making them use the client?
Another very good question. So I'll tackle each one of those individually. iMessage as a feature set that Apple provides, Apple does work with EMM providers to provide controls for iMessage to be able to enable, disable. SMS is a carrier feature specifically, so companies, especially corporate-owned devices, companies can contact carriers to disable SMS functionality and thereby drive their corporate population to the CellTrust SecureLine application specifically, and then support that with organizational policy.
Great. Okay, another one that came through is, does the personal side of the conversation to a non-registered phone get recorded on the server as well?
Great question. Absolutely. So the call is bridged through our server. We actually, once we set the call up, we're not connecting endpoint to endpoint by themselves. So because our server bridges that call, the recording does capture both sides of the conversation. Yes.
And just to touch on that specific question, and so Joseph is 100% right, but this option for call recording is an administrative feature that can be turned on or off depending on your business requirements. So if this is not a feature that your organization requires, it can be simply disabled. And so that is something that can be addressed and defined through our policies.
Absolutely. And things that you see here, that feature, all of the archiving functionality, the ability to integrate with the external world through SecureLine, those are all things that we control via policy from the server itself. Very good point, Jeff. Thank you.
Okay, let's see. It looks like we have a few more. Once again, if you have any questions, feel free to put those through. We'll touch on those. Another one is, are deleted messages archived? So deleted text, would that be captured?
Fabulous question. So we provide the end user the ability to clean up their interface by a delete function. However, every message, if the administrator has chose to archive, and of course that's why we're all here today talking, is recorded by the server and then delivered to the archive. So the act of the user cleaning up their interface by deleting in no way affects the permanent record that the server maintains.
So let's see, another one comes through. What happens if the app is not open? Let's say that they get a call or a text and the app is closed.
Fantastic. So we leverage Google and Apple's push notification systems as well, GCM and APNS, so that if a call or a message comes in, the push notification is there to wake the application up in order to contact the server to either bridge the call or go retrieve the message. We can also run our application in the background, especially as Jeff touched on before with Samsung, because of the level of API integration that Samsung gives us, but also we work with Apple to run our application as a background task in order to be immediately responsive as these pushes are coming in. So yes, we absolutely can respond. Even if the UI or the application is placed in the background, then the push notification coming in will cause our application to respond and react accordingly.
Great. And then what happens if a user has multiple devices? Does it tie back to one user, or can they have multiple? How does that work exactly?
So currently, the SecureLine configuration is that each device is registered as an individual device on the server, so that if a user had a phone and a tablet, in today's world, that would appear as two separate devices.
Great. Let's see. That looks like all the questions we have right now. Once again, if you have any questions, feel free to put those through. But that looks like all of them. So we'll go ahead and finish up. Thanks again, Jeff and Joseph, and thanks everyone for being here and for your interest in this webinar. Just so you know, this webinar has been recorded, so everyone who was on this call will receive an email with a link to this recording, so make sure to look for that. And once again, I'd like to thank the people from CellTrust for being here and for presenting this information. Thanks again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, we'll see everyone on the next webinar. Bye.
Have a good day.